Former minister mentor Mr. Kuan Yew was an environmentalist even before the word became fashionable, says Minister for the Environment and Water Resources Dr. Vivian Balakrishnan.
Mr. Kuan Yew was a greenie 50 years ago, before it was even fashionable to be green. He was the one who insisted we must make sure we have enough water. We must plant trees because otherwise this will be a concrete jungle. We must not pollute the air because it's the air that we breathe. We must not mess up our land because we have so little land. In any case, if you mess up you're messing up your own backyard, your own front yard. So you see, fortunately, our founding leaders were environmentalists before people even had the word environmentalist.
The government today wants to carry on this heritage, and Mr. Vivian Balakrishnan says Singapore can become a model for other nations.
I believe for the next 50 years, if we can get our design and plans right, and we educate our people and organize ourselves right, Singapore can be a model of how human life can be lived well in the next 50 years.
The minister was speaking to some 250 students at a dialogue session at Singapore Polytechnic on Wednesday. He touched on the redevelopment of the Bukit Brown Cemetery Road project. He said trade-offs still have to be made when managing the scarcity of land here.
Bukit Brown, the cemetery, parts of it have to be exhumed and has to be developed. And these are very painful decisions. I mean, I myself have got great-grandparents buried there. And you always have to get this balance right between progress, preserving our history, preserving our greenery, and yet making sure there's enough space for the younger generation of Singapore to grow and prosper.
Speaking on Singapore's water supply, Minister Vivian Balakrishnan said scientific breakthroughs in the last decade have made it possible for Singapore to imagine a future where it is self-sufficient.
Membrane technology suddenly made it economically viable, which meant the big news in this past decade has been that it is now theoretically possible for Singapore to be water independent. But, and here let me put a big but, our current agreement with Malaysia will last until 2061, and we intend to stick to that agreement until 2061. But we have to ensure that by that time, or before that time, if need be, we can produce entirely enough water for ourselves. So by 2061, the 4 taps would look a bit like this. 30% of our water would come from desalination, that means from the sea. 50% would come from recycled water. Another 20% would come from surface water and reservoirs.
When asked whether Singapore was doing enough to reduce its consumption of plastic bags, the minister had this to say.
I must admit, I'm not a fundamentalist, so meaning there are still times when plastic bags are useful. As long as we all have just a natural sense that let's not be wasteful, and let's not be wasteful as a daily habit, I think that's far more important.